coming up for you as we progress our way through round number 2. It's going to be Vinz versus ALB987. I believe we're going to start this series from 0-0 as well, because Prix made such quick work of his second round opponent. Now, Lorinda, throwing it over to you. Where are you on Vinz and ALB987?
Vinz is as much a player as a caster these days in French, I believe. He has a very good DreamHack record himself, being on 58% over a long time, 29 wins, 21 losses.
Okay.
He had a decent result in one of the DreamHacks last year. I think he top 8'd from memory. That's straight from memory, though, not from notes.
Risky.
That's always dangerous at my age.
Yeah.
I don't know much about ALB987, but I believe he is a regular player. It's a name that somewhere I've seen.
Sure.
That's not new.
Well, let's get into some more concrete information, which is the decks and bans that these players are going to be coming out with. I believe we're going to get those on screen. There you go. Druid, Rogue, and Paladin from Vinz going up against ALB's Druid, Priest, and Warlock. ALB has had his Rogue banned. Vinz has had his Priest banned. So there we go. Just as we were talking about a Rogue ban, there goes the Rogue from ALB. And Vinz, the little wrinkle in his lineup here, the 4th deck, as you've been calling it, is that Paladin. Do you think that has any impact on a Rogue ban coming out?
We're seeing more and more Paladin picked, but it seems unusual actually to ban the Rogue. I think Paladin is okay sometimes. Not like the olden days where Rogue used to just stomp through it, I don't think, with stuff like Fan of Knives. But I think it makes some sense to ban the Rogue, but I don't know. I think Paladin's just a class I don't think you should bring to tournaments, so just don't ban anything and give up.
I was going to say sitting firmly on the fence there, but then you came out with the concrete statement. That's what I like to hear.
Right or wrong, you just want a good solid guess.
There you go. Less hypotheticals. Let's look at the reality. It's going to start off with Zoo Warlock from ALB going up against the probable Jade Druid here from Vinz. Wrath, Jade Blossom, Mind Control Tech, one of the floating tech card slots, picking up a second one as well, and that is potential to do a huge amount of work against Zoo.
Yeah, and you don't really play around it that much, because even though it's in a lot of Druid decks and you know it's an option for them, firstly, if you slow down too much, it can be a nightmare. And secondly, a lot of them just don't have it.
Yes.
In a ban format, quite often you just ban the cards, the decks you would need it against.
ALB with the face of a man who knows what his turn 2 is. Bang!
No messing around here. How impactful is a turn 2 Keleseth in the realms of where people say it's completely ridiculous? Are you on the agreement, or is it actually slightly less good than people think it is?
Can you rephrase that question in a way that makes sense?
How ridiculous is Keleseth on 2?
Really, really ridiculous.
Okay.
I think more so in Rogue than Warlock. Warlock can actually afford to play it a little bit later and still have it be impactful, because you can live tap and pick up cards immediately. Whereas Rogue wants to have huge threats immediately as soon as they play through their opening hand.
Right.
You've played your Firefly or whatever on turn 1, you drop your Keleseth on curve, then suddenly you want to be drawing those 3s, 4s, and 5s that are already buffed off the top to curve out with. Warlock has a lot more flexibility in terms of how they play through their early game turns.
Yeah, I also feel that the punish in Rogue for not getting Keleseth is a lot less than it is in Warlock. Like, you don't really want to tap oddly enough in Warlock. You're in a hurry to get your stuff on the board. In Rogue, if you have to dagger up, well, that's not so bad.
Yes, that is also very, very true indeed.
So, staying on 3 minions here, ALB, and just getting the damage in as quickly as possible. One thing that makes MC Tech a little bit hard to land here is that Warlock will naturally play around Spreading Plague, which means that sometimes, kind of by accident, in conjunction with the fact they know that MC Tech could be there, they just won't put that 4th minion down.
It's a great point. It's actually one of the reasons why I don't like Mind Control Tech in the deck too much, is because it does get caught in that Spreading Plague crossfire. You know, Spreading Plague is one of the most hated cards in Hearthstone right now, and it's a card that everyone and their mother knows how to play around. It's one of the things you do tunnel on when you're playing against Druid. I think that's a great piece of analysis, that Mind Control Tech just can struggle to land because of that threat of Spreading Plague.
So it's only really useful in decks that have to go wide, which is basically the mirror, where you're trying to stop them from putting out those wide Druid, those wide Jades, and they don't care about the Spreading Plague, because you've got to get rid of both Spreading Plagues anyway. So let's see how this works out. Well done, Neil. Immediately puts the 4th minion down and goes to the face.
Yeah, I think in this position, he's in such good shape against a mind control tech anyway. Like, he can lose any one of these minions and still be threatening lethal on the follow-up turn. He's just dropping can alongside this, so no real reason to respect it. And of course, we're tunneling on the mind control tech because we're staring at 2 mind control techs. You made the point early on that sometimes it's just not a card you play around because they don't always have it in the deck. It's a tech card. It's not a staple.
Okay, and the reason we're talking about it is because there's not much else happening in this Druid hand as well. Quickly point out, Vinz is on Armor team along with Torque and Odemian, which is pretty stacked, you could say, as a lineup. Is there anything he can really do, given what we can see? Given what he can see, there's plenty to do. But what we can see, he's got it to do.
The Dreadlord was a great steal, though, because it does allow him to deal with the 2 crucial minions on the board. Or one of the 2 crucial minions on the board, I should say. Of course, he could have just stolen one of those instead, but then your opponent still has the Dreadlord, which is making them not have to trade a lot of the time through your board. So the fact that Dreadlord comes over to his side as a 6/3 and allows the swipe to swing is such a huge deal. And ALB now as well, picking up his 2nd Soulfire right on time to threaten to end this game. If either Cairn or Bane lands at this point, plus that Soulfire, unless Vinz gains the 1 from the hero power, that is just going to be threatening lethal single-handedly.
So when's Gul'dan actually good? I'm just looking at this Gul'dan thinking either the Druid stabilizes and wins or it doesn't.
Yeah, I mean, hashtag unpopular opinion, I do not think Gul'dan is relevant in any matchup in Zoo. I think it's a huge mistake to be playing that card.
Is that because of the discard, or because the games don't go to turn 10 enough, or because you've won if you get there, or lost equal way?
I think, yeah, the matchups where it helps, you know, Priest, for example. I think if Priest gets to turn 10, you're asking for them to have not drawn well to even really have a chance, even with Gul'dan. So I would rather have a lower cost card that allows me to curve out more aggressively more often and end games before I get to turn 10 in my deck. That's how I have been building and playing Zoo. That's what I've been having success with. My win rate has been much higher without the card than with it, but so many people disagree with me on that that I'm going to respect their much greater sample size at this point. One
thing that's very difficult to analyze about the card, as I'm just watching this happen, is getting to turn 10 is... playing Gul'dan means getting to turn 10, and that's a specific words won't even come out, the ones that I do know, condition, which means you can't
That didn't even have any R's or W's in it.
I know, that's what I'm saying, like the words I should be able to say. But you can't always separate the fact you got to turn 10 from the fact you played Gul'dan. So against Rogue, for instance, if you play Gul'dan, your win rate is gigantic. But if you get to turn 10 as Zoo against Rogue, your win rate should be gigantic. And separating those out isn't a simple process.
Yeah. In the meantime, the combination of Cairn and Soulfire, as I set up on the previous turn, did end the game for ALB with the Zoo Warlock. So he has picked up his first win. The Druid has been eliminated from Vinz, and he really did not get a huge impact out of those 2 mind control techs. One landed and it got arguably one of the strongest outcomes it could have picked up, and it just wasn't enough to counter-punch against the aggression that ALB was putting out. And again, this is a very strong-looking opening for ALB here, but I think Rogue in this matchup just has the combinations that can break these ties very effectively. The backstab, the extra tempo that you get from a dagger over 2 turns compared to life tap. You know, when you're playing a tempo board-based matchup, would you rather draw a card or would you rather have the best tempo hero power in the game?
Sure, I mean, Rogue is almost certainly favored substantially here. Going back to the 4th deck discussion, though, I feel that Zoo is one of the decks that can just kind of beat anything. It has that sort of 45% against everything lineup.
It has a potential to be a sweep deck, right?
Yeah. Which is the other way of doing it for what I was saying, where you build it as a counter deck. You just stick it out there and it's not that bad.
Yeah.
It'll all be okay.
Yeah. Just going back to the point about the matchup, though, I think you set this up very nicely before. As I'm saying, Warlock here, their hero power draws cards. It sustains them. They have late game tools like Gul'dan and Bone Mares and so on that they draw more consistently because of the hero power. Rogue has the tempo tools. They have the Vilespine Slayers, they have the SI7s, they have the backstab, and they have that dagger hero power, which is fantastic. So you were saying earlier, when you play Gul'dan against Rogue, your win rate is insane. But the reason for that is that you get to turn 10.
Yeah.
And that illustrates the matchup for you. That tells you what your goal is as Warlock. Your goal is just to go resource for resource and just take them to the late game, at which point you then out-resource them very effectively. Rogue has to tempo swing, has to grip the board early and keep hold of it.
Understanding those stats is going to be crucial to ALB's next turn. Because if he feels that he needs the Gul'dan on turn 10, he won't want to discard it to this really good tempo-y Soulfire that he actually will probably play on turn 5 now. But
there's just not a good Soulfire target on the board.
I was expecting there would be one eventually, yeah.
Right.
So, but he will need to use that Soulfire aggressively to maintain the board and not worry about the fact if Gul'dan goes, that's just tough.
Yes.
Which is another reason not to put it in your deck. But there you go. We beat that drum quite a bit.
Choosing to go Deckhand Patch's Dagger here just to take care of the board state. Had the option to just play the 3-3, but then he is walking into just about any buff effect. He's walking into Crystal Weaver, he's walking into Soulfire, he's walking into a variety of options. This is kind of what I was talking about in the intro when I was breaking down how you play against Breakfast Priest. The classical example of that from the beginning of time is Zoo. How do you beat Zoo? You kill every minion they play, because once they can start landing buffs, you're in trouble.
And to be honest, if you said that about every deck in the format right now, you wouldn't be a million miles off. Kill everything, it turns out, when things are resources isn't necessarily a bad plan.
Yeah, Raza Priest. You know how you beat them? Kill every minion they play.
Yeah, kill them both. It's a good start.
No, you have to kill their face, because then they're dead.
But Raza Priest is like his own thing.
Is it?
Yeah, very much so.
All right, sure.
It's a one-off. And a one-off. All right. Vinz now has this decision about how long does he think this game will go.
Pickaxe. Neil doesn't understand this joke. That's twice now. Twitch chat gets it.
If I'm gonna cry by the end of this.
I'm gonna keep doing it every time.
I know. This is why I'm going to cry.
His little oblivious face is just so adorable.
If he thinks the game's going to go several turns, then he will get more value by playing the KLSF, or he may just decide I'm not playing the KLSF this game. If he thinks he needs to get this over within 3 or 4 turns, those buffs will be pretty insignificant.
Waiting for him to figure it out. I know your sight's bad, but is your hearing bad also?
Pardon?
So now, look at this for Value Trade City here with the Dreadlord just going through the Sarenites, take care of the Sarenites, and this cannot go on much longer. The Dreadlord is going to clear up, but Vilespine is available to counterpunch here. I said this whole time, Rogue is looking for those tempo swing turns, and that's exactly what Vinz has just found here. The one saving grace for ALB is that Vinz does not have a dagger up currently to get that full board clear.
Yeah, and Vinz has kind of played this game backwards by necessity. All of his big stuff sort of came out as quickly as it could. Now he's playing the smaller stuff next turn and the turn after just to fill up. Go wide and start tackling the zoo, which makes this cairn pretty important to at least keep ALB in there with a chance of trading stuff.
We just take a moment to appreciate the fact that it's 2017 and we're all jamming cairn.
Okay.
It's kind of weird, right, when you think about it?
Well, we're playing Velen.
That's also true, yeah.
It's like we're just playing 2017 cards.
What's next? King Crush?
Don't get Raven all excitable, please.
Okay.
But yeah, probably. People seem to like big, like Hunter legendaries. Why not?
Now we're kind of in the territory where it's decision time on this Soulfire, I think. Because there is a pretty irritating looking 3-4 there. You can just trade your can through it, and it's going to be very, very enticing when you do have that Gul'dan in hand, especially now this is your second Dreadlord that you've dropped. So that Gul'dan has got some serious presence inside its sack right now.
That is going to hurt. But that is why it's hard to have 10 drops in decks that discard cards.
Yep.
You're just relying on drawing at the right time. He'd definitely have been in a good spot if he had kept it, to be fair. So that's a plus for having it, I guess. But if it had a cheaper card, it'd be on the board, not in his hand, wouldn't be discarded, would be pressing for board.
Such are the hypotheticals that make Hearthstone such a fascinating game.
Vinz still sticking to the plan of killing all the zoo stuff, and now that Gul'dan has gone, he knows that he hasn't got to face down this situation where all his minions just get blown up later on. He hasn't got to face the health reload that ALB might be able to get. So he can just take his time to some degree, but as you pointed out earlier, he has to be a little bit careful about the card reload if we get into a resource war.
Yes. And now Vinz has to try and find some way to pressure off the back of the swing that he's made, because he can't allow ALB just to life tap every turn. If that happens, he's going to get overwhelmed at some point, so he needs to try and ramp up the pressure here, and he has Bone Mare, which is a fantastic tool for doing that. Vicious Fledgling and Cobalt Scalebane in combination are a huge amount of pressure as well.
Yeah,
he's going to go Apothecary instead.
I thought he was going to ram 10 to the face there, but he's going this route. And sticking to the, if you haven't got anything, I've got enough damage to put the pressure on plan.
This allows ALB the free life taps though, and that is a free Soulfire, but again, not a fantastic target left on the board. Probably just going to be forced to take care of the Scalebane with it.
ALB's main way back in this, apart from the fact he's got an okay board, is going to be that Doom Guard in future turns. He's kind of run out of other stuff. There can't be many big minions left in his deck if Vinz can just keep carrying on killing everything.
I'm very confused as to what ALB's plan is this turn. To me, the turn here looks like trade the Bone Mare and then Soulfire and trade the Scalebane. If he is going to do that, he has wasted the buff on the Veteran, which could be on the Councilman.
Sure, yeah, he played it a bit quickly.
I think looking at his facial expressions and the moment where he paused, he caught that halfway through his turn as well.
Yeah, players who haven't been on the big stage much sometimes just rush that tiny, tiny amount, not even a huge noticeable difference, and that was one of those occasions, I think.
But it looks like Vinz has brought this one back from the depths. Voidwalker, too low impact. This would have been a position where ALB would have loved to have a Gul'dan to jam down just to generate some board presence, but even then, would it even have been good enough in that spot? The two Dreadlords would have done nothing against that board state that he was looking at, and essentially he would have played one Voidwalker, which is the same thing that he drew anyway.
Coming into this tournament, I feel that Zoo was the better choice for fourth deck, if we keep using that phrase, I'm afraid. And I didn't see anything there to put me off that view.
Okay.
It felt like it was at least competitive. Some of the other decks we've seen, like Paladin and such like, they haven't even felt like they're in the same league as the decks they're fighting against.
You made the point earlier that, you know, if your fourth deck ends up going 1-1, it's probably done its job at that point, right? Like, you need your decks to average above one win across the board. So if your worst deck is picking up one win, then sure, there's a good chance that your, quote, better decks are then picking up the slack that you need them to.
And that's only talking about the most likely lineup, the common lineup 60%, 70% of players bring. This is nothing to do with that lineup.
Nope.
This is an aggro druid. This is the one that picks on the big priests and the big druids that come out there.
He's off to a good start as well, just choosing to jam Bloodsail Corsair, not holding on to it for the weapon, recognizes that he just needs the board presence immediately. And now Vinz, straight away, decision time. Does he need to contest this straight away? Does he need to backstab a 1-2 when there's potentially higher threats? More importantly, did he have any expectation of this being aggro druid?
What do I do if my opponent plays a 1-5 anytime soon, or 1-6, or anything huge that I can't get through? You've got to save some way of killing those, whether that's spells or minions is your choice, but if these guys hide behind those big taunts, the game just ends for Rogue.
Yep. He is.
There's the 1-6 of which I speak, but there's not really much ALB can do this turn to set it up as a good card. So even though he has the cards he was looking for here, it's going to take him another turn or two to set up, and whilst that's going on, Vinz is going to start curving into that huge part of his deck. This thing is so hard to kill.
It is, especially when it sticks around on board for long enough for living mana to become a factor, because then it's just brutal.
Yeah, who'd have thought a 1-6 would be one of the better cards in the game?
Just about everyone when it was announced, I think.
That's only because they'd already proved that a 1-5 did it. Let's go back in time maybe 12 months ago.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, if you want to go one level deeper, no one really thought Darkshire Councilman was going to be as broken as it was when it was first announced. But we learned that lesson very quickly and then saw Crypt Lord and went, yeah, that card's good.
The interesting thing with Darkshire Councilman, just while we watch these boards develop here, is it was really good in the meta it came out in, but it's not quite so good in the meta where everyone's doing 5 damage to all minions.
Sure.
So the numbers game is a very tricky one to play.
Hero Power or a 3-2 chooses to go with a 3-2 here. If there wasn't a taunt on the board, it's an obvious play, right? Like, why play a 3-2 when you can take a 2-1 off the board, right, for free? That's essentially the same swing. But because the taunt's in the way, breaking up the combat math, having a 3-2 in play is actually a little bit different, right? Whether he's just looking at that living mana and saying, oh, I want both of my buffs in hand, who knows? But we will see how this develops over the coming turns.
Yeah, this isn't where Druid just wants to be. It's been trading for the first 4 turns of the game. It's not a happy bunny in that situation normally.
There's a reason to hold on to your buffs as well if you're playing the Penguins as well. In that case, you have the ability to get a lot of buff value at any given point if you do draw that 0 mana 1-1.
I don't know how many months that card has been out, but that image still makes me laugh every single time.
It is unfairly adorable.
And this is the bit of aggro Druid that's really tricky, is how many buffs, how much, how often, how wide, when. But of course, ALB has that living mana. It must be very tempting to hold on to the mark, but he's decided the numbers work out better than to do it right away.
Yeah, and his choice to hold on to the Power of the Wild and not play the 3-2 has definitely come up big for him in this spot because of that Snow Flipper Penguin draw. He just got himself a 3-3 in play for 0 mana. Huge board swing. Why are you shaking your head every time I say Snow Flipper Penguin? There it is again! What?
How did this get in a deck?
Freaking Pavlov's dog over here.
How did that get in a deck?
I mean,
I can see how he got in the deck. It's just funny that Wisp isn't quite good enough.
It's not
but
Beast.
You make something a Beast, and it's exactly the same card, and suddenly it's good enough.
Yep.
Such are the fine lines.
Take that, salty Hunter players.
It's the right colour hero. You should be fine. All right. Well, Vinz has still spent most of the game just being traded into, but now he's going to have to face down a significantly more difficult test.
Whoa, 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 whoa. Take a minute here, sir. Are you not trading? He's going to miss a minion if he doesn't trade.
Is he missing a minion or saving a mana?
Also a good question.
Because now next turn he can play the captain.
That's very true. No, next turn he can play the crawler.
Sorry, the crawler, yeah.
Yes. That is an excellent point. You are 100% right, and I am stupid.
I've been waiting to hear those words for so many years, guys. I can retire peacefully now.
Great. No, and you're 100%. Like, the reason I know that was his thinking as well is because he moused over the crawler right before he made the play. So he clearly was planning this out. He wants to have another tempo swing the next turn with a potential pirate. That is a great catch, Neil, and exactly what his thinking was.
Okay, so now, and he picks up Mark Logan. So all of that thinking was completely wasted.
Yeah.
But he does now just pick up the card that he would need to do so much damage. And the rogue without a bone mare is not even going to put anything in the way. And it's just too many things.
Trust the pirate's code. I'm in charge now.
Another reason why, you know, ALB made that play, sacrificing a minion to make sure he could play the Galactic Crawler, as you can see from the patches being pulled here, all of Vinz's pirates are still in his deck or in his hand. Right. So he knows the percentage chance of him having to eat a pirate at some point in this game is just so high.
Yeah, and even if Vinz is holding back a pirate, you can't play your crawler because you don't want him to allow him to then play that pirate.
Right.
So the second he sees the crawler, it's just licensed to do what he likes. As it happens, he wasn't really holding them back. And now this is the fruits of that previous play. Now he just goes as wide as you like. And turns out Living Mana's pretty good against a deck that picks off things one at a time.
It's a heck of a card. Vinz looks like he is just about out of answers right now. Swashbuckler is going to have to find some magic. One spreading plague, please, sir. Nope. That is a useless bear.
It's not the way you word it, though. You upset the bear. You upset the hunter players again.
He is a bear. These other minions are not bears.
Okay. Paladin next up. Just to divert this discussion quickly towards Hearthstone.
I mean, ALB has found a way back there with the surprise pick of the Aggro Druid, and now Aggro Druid going to come up against Paladin. We do see those Galactic Crawlers packed into Aggro Druids. Sometimes the deck can pack crabs as well, because low-cost beasts as we illustrated with Snowflipper Penguin,
Yeah.
are cards that deck is interested in playing. The other side of that is Vinz leaning towards the UK Pala with his Paladin list. We saw Boar Control perhaps get a little bit punished for having those pirates in his build. He had the Dread Corsairs stuck in his hand the entire game, and he ran into Galactic Crawler because of the fact that he had pirates in there. So these are all decisions that, rewind all the way back through the play. The deck building decisions, the lineup choices can also have big impacts as well.
Well, Vinz is going to be pretty happy with this opening hand. Is it going to be enough? It looks like so far ALB has a fairly slow hand, but he does have the taunts, which is always one of the cards you look for, oddly enough. But nothing to really spam out there. And not respecting the UK palette at all.
Well, I think, yeah, all things considered, you have to play it. There's a small chance that there are pirates coming out against you, but more importantly, there is a Tide Caller certainly staring you down on the board that you need to deal with.
Double mark as well, of course, trying to get into some better stuff with this pretty slow hand.
Yep. That extra 1 point of health proving so crucial, because your opponent can certainly make their way up to 2 power here. Can they get up to 3? Well, with that Valving Inquisitor draw, yes, they certainly can.
And that will be almost game, even at this early point. Not quite, but getting rid of the defender at this point with nothing on board.
Here, pass me your book. I'll fill it in for you.
Cheers.
There you go. And that's 2, 2, 2. There we go.
Cheers. Sotul actually did do that. It's a thing that happened in my book.
It's called commitment to a bit. That's what that's called.
Paladin is going to get the job done and looking good doing so as well. But
yeah, and this is just not the spot you want to be in. Playing Power of the Wild for a 3-2 when it's your only minion on board. When you're playing it as a 3-2 alongside 2 other minions in play, that's when things can somehow get interesting because, do you want to buff the 2-2 of stats or do you want to play an individual 3-2 on the board? That's sometimes a situation you're happy to do it. Just playing it as a solo 3-2 on the board, no, that is not where you want to be with your life.
Looks like ALB has put together, I'm just thinking about what his priest is going to be. I'm just going to go straight on to the next game here. Actually.
Just very quickly,
yeah.
Vinz has dumpstered this Megasaur. That is the absolute worst combination he could have picked up, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, he's just like, just give me anything else. Dumpstered the Megasaur. It's just a phrase that will probably live with me for some time. Because he still has to worry about living mana this turn.
Yes.
But from where he's sat, actually, living mana would be pretty bad news. And I guess ALB does have a chance to draw into things with these double marks.
Yeah, and the reason I was so confident in being able to call that as being a good position for the Paladin is because the Megasaur was there to back up that play, but the Megasaur hasn't done anything. It's a
my book.
It's a 4-mana 5/4. It's had almost zero effect on the Murlocs in play. One traded as exactly as it would have done otherwise, and one's just transformed from an Inquisitor into a Voidwalker.
I mean, not only has the Megasaur ruined your day, it's now hiding behind the things it messed up and just sitting there chilling. Still looking pretty good for him, though. His curve is still pretty tasty, as long as he can navigate turn 6 without serious disaster.
Yeah, that's what the counterpoint I was about to make is what on earth does he do next turn?
I mean, he'll be able to play the card he draws. I think he has every expensive card in his hand.
Sure.
So that's going to average a 2 or 3 drop. He can hero power. He's not facing any pressure is the key thing. What does he do next turn if ALB plays living mana is a different question.
Yeah,
that's draw that.
That's the other dangerous part about ever ruling aggro druid out, right? Is that you can just pick up living mana and suddenly you're back in the game.
Yeah, it's just such a key card to the deck. And there's this sneaky savage draw might do some stuff as well.
There goes the redemption. But still, value trades are now available. 2 of them, in fact, for this Patches and for the Taunt minion as well, just plowing through. And now, suddenly ALB is back in strong control of this board. And again, it has to come down to no Divine Shield, no plants, nothing on those minions that came out from the Gentle Megasaur.
Yeah, and you owe me a notepad.
Sorry.
Still not over completely because ALB is actually struggling to find his own ways to generate pressure, but he's definitely in a significantly better spot than he was.
Scalebane hero power here, though.
That looks a pretty good deal.
Actually, Mark of Yasharaj is even stronger. You can just use the patches to trade through the 5-1 and then take a value trade on the War Leader as well. Otherwise, you're leaving the War Leader in play. Essentially, you leave a minion in play for Bone Mare to land on either way. The difference is that if you leave War Leader, it can value trade your Scalebane with Bone Mare. If you leave a 1-1, it cannot value trade your Scalebane with Bone Mare. And I think that is a huge difference.
Okay. Yeah, value trading being absolutely key in these low.
Al's going to go the other way, and he misses the attack with the Corsair. And you can see right now, ALB is just not in a good place with his play at the moment. He's doing enough. He's making the important decisions, but he's just making these little mechanical errors that are coming back to cost him. But I think, like, missing that 1 damage is whatever. That's a play that can happen to anyone.
Yep.
The more important thing this turn is his choice of sequencing that's let the potential value trade here happen with that War Leader. For me, that is the much more important thing to talk about than the fact he missed 1 damage with a 1-2.
Yeah, it just also means your mind's not necessarily in the right place. Maybe he's feeling it a bit up there. I mean, he's on a stage, not a player we know much about. So that can, we say it every time, and it sounds like a meme. But when you speak to the players afterwards, I know you were there yourself many, many moons ago. They always admit to being a bit nervous.
Yeah, it's not a thing that we make up. Players definitely feel it. Some more than others. Some have certainly said the opposite and said, no, didn't really get that nervous. It felt pretty normal to me. But the majority
They've said that.
Sure. The majority of people that we speak to certainly confess that playing on stage is very, very different from chilling at home in your pants, jamming some Hearthstone.
Vinz appears to have stabilised by the fact that that Bone Mare did its thing.
Yeah.
One thing I do like about Bone Mare is when it doesn't do its thing, it's blooming awful.
Yeah.
The upside is it does its thing too often, but that's what makes it so good. But actually, if you can just stop it doing that, turns out that 7-mana 5/5s are kind of junk. Who knew?
Very true. But now ALB has lost the grip to the extent that Vinz has an entire free turn of tempo here, essentially. The board gets traded down as we see it, and Vinz just has an entire 9-mana turn to develop whatever he would like. And what he would like is another 9/9 of stats for 7 mana.
So I tried to start a discussion about 10 minutes ago, which involved Priest versus Paladin.
Sure.
Right, let's go there.
All right.
Has ALB, do you think, brought a lineup with versatility? We've seen a lot of lineups with like Druid, Rogue, Priest. They all do kind of the same thing. They control the board, kill you. With this, we've got aggro deck, we've got Druid. Do you think it's going to be a normal Priest deck for some versatility, or do you think he's just brought a kind of wacky lineup and this could be some sort of crazy Priest, like Breakfast Priest again?
It's possible. I worry about the implications of playing 3 aggro decks, and he has banned out Priest from the opponent, which makes me suspect that he's gone for 3 board-focused decks because Priest is just so good at shutting that stuff down. But there are a lot of effective counters to these board-based aggro decks right now. We're seeing the slower decks take over, and the mid-range decks come into play. But never mind, throw that out the window. ALB has gone for a more versatile lineup, and he has nailed exactly what he needs in his opening hand.
Now this
Two of his cards say if on them, and that's what you want.
Not the fact that he's got this hand, but this makes me happy that Last Hero Standing was in some ways a bit of a weird art in that we see a lot of conquests, and so we see people bringing the best 3 decks a lot of the time. What ALB has done is he's diversified, which means he feels this lineup it has 3 decks that can sweep different lineups. Like old school with counters and stuff. So the aggro Druid is actually serving a purpose rather than just being best deck. Be interesting to see how this lineup does proceed in the tournament. Assuming he wins this game of Hearthstone, which, you know, I was just looking at 5/8 and thinking, yeah, that's good.
Yeah.
There's still quite a way to go before he gets there. He doesn't actually have many removal options in his hand apart from this Pyromancer.
Well, I was just about to say the opposite, Neil. Which
Okay.
is the Potion of Madness that you already had, in combination with the fact that he drew Pyromancer and has Coin Circle of Healing in his hand, that actually gives him enough to get to the point where he can play Raza and then curve through into Anduin without there just being 20 power staring back at him on the other side of the board. He can stop snowballs. He can stop a War Leader from just terrorizing. He can take care of a Megasaur turn that maybe, you know, fills Vinz's board with plants and sets up for a Tarim to just absolutely destroy him. It's enough removal to give him that couple of turns that he needs.
See if that's how it ends up panning out. There goes one of those things.
Yeah. I am very surprised that the Pyromancer was committed to board in that spot.
Yeah, me too, to be fair. And if the coin goes as well, that means that Bone Mare could come into it on turn 7, depending how much damage is needed, that Anduin being 1 turn behind at that point. 1 full turn behind, not 1 half turn.
You are not welcome.
And you were talking about 20 damage staring at you. We're not getting too far away from that suddenly.
We're not. That makes it 11 by my count, and now that he's lost the Pyromancer and the coin, these cards, like Silence, Circle of Healing, Holy Smite, Powered Shield, these are all much, much less effective as removal tools as they would have been, and that is also far less effective because with a Pyromancer in hand, he'd have been looking at Pyromancer, Norsha Cleric's Circle of Healing combination, which certainly would have given him all the removal that he
given
needed.
the rest of the deck is just removal and card draw, then yeah, drawing 5 or 4, whatever it would have been insane. And now he's relying on the 6 to 8 health he will gain in the next 3 or 4 turns to somehow stave off this, well, crazy Murloc attack that's going to starting next turn.
As long as that War Leader is in play, though, it's going to make it just a little bit easier for Anduin to crush Vinz's dreams.
We should write our own WoW lore. I'm pretty sure Anduin isn't the Dream Crusher, but it sounds great to me.
No, Murloc War Leader is the Dream Crusher.
Oh, he's going to crush the Anduin dreams. Okay.
I mean, he has Shadowy Thoughts, which I guess you can connect to crushing dreams, right? If you really think about it hard enough, while also not thinking about it
all
at
the
all.
WoW specialists are just crying right now. Sorry, guys. We play Hearthstone.
Yeah. I barely know what a Hearthstone is.
You only found that out the other day. That was interesting, actually. Yeah, Sottle was mentioning that on Twitter. He just about understood the reference to a Hearthstone. Yeah. Wow.
You are not welcome here.
Meanwhile, references or not, Vinz is killing Alb rapidly here. And Alb hasn't got a coin. He's got to survive 3 more turns somehow.
Dragonfire Potion's not going to help. Holy Fire will, though, but not this turn. Master Spell could be the boy as well in this spot.
It's interesting. You've got to think how much damage are these kobolds going to do to me over the next 2 or 3 turns.
Yeah.
And I think the answer is way too much. So the Master Spell, very tempting. Plus, I mean, look at his hand. The extra card's probably worth a lot more than 5 health here. Digging towards a Shadow of Death or something. So can the Holy Fire get him there? He'll have to Holy Fire one of the Scalebanes.
Well, if he chooses not to Master Spell this turn, he can use Holy Smite, which, in combination with the Cleric, also takes a good chunk of damage off the board anyway. So there are swings and roundabout situations to this choice. Also choosing to gain the 2 rather than draw a card. Could have gone for the heal on the 5-3, taking it up to a 5-5. Worth thinking about as well.
So he's going to lose half his health total here.
Ouch.
And yeah, Vinz is only a third of the way through the required turns. And more worryingly for Alb is just his hand is not conducive to killing stuff. Maybe the Priest of the Feast can get enough done to get into turn 8, but Vinz is just going for the throat here. Oh, for the coin.
Priest of the Feast, though, is absolutely massive in this spot. This is a huge swing for Alb, and perhaps the stabilization that he needed. Accentuated by the fact that Vinz chose to pretty much go all in on that War Leader. He put a ton of buffs on there with the Seer and the Blessing of Kings. Of course, doing so actually played around Silence more so than loading it onto a 5-5 instead, but still puts himself in a position where Silence did crush a lot of his momentum in that spot, but it's the Priest of the Feast that's really the final nail in the coffin.
Yeah, that's pretty incredible how you can look so out of it and have every single card in this deck seems to just work so well together.
Yes. But here's the crazy part about Murloc Paladin. Now the super aggressive push is going to get shut down. It's already been shut down a little bit, and now Shadow Reaper Anduin is going to come into play and probably crush the rest of it. Vinz could choose to play around it in this spot. We'll examine that line in a little bit. But even if Anduin does shut down the 5-5 and the 6-6 Tyrion here, well, Vinz can just switch back to value plan instead, and he has a Spike Ridge Steed. He'll have an Ashbringer equipped.
Yep.
And Alb is just going to be sat, run out of cards in his hand. One of his cards is a Circle of Healing.
Yeah. One of the cards is a Lyra, which works well with Circle of Healing.
It does.
Which will be why he drew the line at 19 health. When he decided, hey, shall I gain 3 more? I'm like, no, I don't need 3 more. I need something to work my Lyra to try and find me some more answers later.
This is cute.
Yeah, making the old-fashioned 4-attack minion me.
Yeah. So the difference here... Did you have to trade in that spot, Vinz? Okay, so here's the point I was going to make. If he'd have played Tyrion and Anduin comes down, then the Priest of the Feast gets through and clears up the War Leader. By playing the Spike Ridge Steed, he actually gave himself the right to go face in that spot, and then the Priest of the Feast would just be running into a 2-6 instead. Of course, the hero power can contest the War Leader in that spot anyway, which makes it all borderline irrelevant. But I think Vinz definitely had a little entitlement to push the face damage there in that spot.
Put your faith in the light.
Yeah, and it could be absolutely crucial because take some damage off Alb's face now. He hasn't got that much left, but 18 seems reasonably comfortable.
Yeah. Of course, the simple line of thinking in that spot is, well, it's a Priest of the Feast, I'm going to kill it. But you already saw your opponent dump all their spells on the previous turn to gain all the health total. So you're giving up 7 damage to kill a Priest of the Feast. They have to already cast 2 spells to make that back up again.
And if they empty their hand, you're good with that.
Sure.
Because it means they haven't got Anduin.
Yeah.
Still not completely out of the woods yet, though, Alb, although getting there. Because he's going to be low on resources, especially after Lyra's killed. Just got a handful of general gubbins. And still facing down 15 from Ashbringer if he kills Tyrion and 6 a turn if he doesn't. So some decisions to make and no lethal in sight anytime soon.
Gonna cycle the Mind Blast, picks up a Shadower Death too late. All mana already allocated this turn. It does give him an answer on the follow-up, but Vinz is ready to go again this turn with a potential Megasaur turn backing all of this up.
Now he has no right to think that Alb has a Shadower Death in hand here.
Well, I mean, here's some cards it could be. It could be a Mind Control. Any of the latter 2 cards could have been a Shadower Death because he wouldn't have had the chance to play it. It could also... no, they wouldn't have been a Silence because I imagine a Silence would have been played already just to silence off the Ashbringer and cycle again off the Lyra. But there are options. There are things that those random cards could
Mass
be.
Dispel could be one up there for another Silence option with the same logic as the Death on the last card.
Okay, so considering it being Master Spell is actually a reason to go all in on the Tyrion instead of going really wide with the Murloc buffs. Playing around random effects is very difficult, Neil.
But it's possible.
It's
thankfully.
possible.
Definitely more possible than people seem to make out.
Wow, shots fired.
At people.
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah. What I heard is quit whining, scrubs, get good.
I thought that's what I said.
Is that what you said?
Yeah.
Okay, fair enough. There you go. He is going to go all in on the Tyrion. Can't really fault him for it too much. Shadow of Death comes down. He still has so much power packing on the board with that additional Bone Mare. He has the Megasaur follow-up. If the Murloc isn't dealt with, the Murloc will be shot down almost immediately.
The mind
by
control
this
thing's an
hero
important
power.
thing, though. That's what he would have spent all that time on, is like, how many spells are there roughly? What chance is there's a mind control? He just loses to it.
Brace the Shadows not looking pretty right now, because if Al picks up a healing card off this Lyra, he would very much like to use it. He's going to go ahead and jam out the Mind Games, clear the board. There is that Master Spell we were talking about, and oh, baby, that is a game-winning Lich King right there.
That's insane. Just going to stabilize entirely on 6 health with no real way through. Not just game-winning, it's match-winning in round 2 against a very strong player in Vinz. It's good result here for Alb.
Vinz still has 1 or 2 things he can try and say about this, but
I mean, he's got to find a way to generate poison.
yeah, we've seen how good his Megasaurs are as well, and the answer is not very.
Wow. I mean, that's random, right? You've got to forget the last ones. He's due a good one now.
Stop bringing sense and logic into this terrible
that's your job.
dumpster Megasaur meme.
That phrase. Vinz, I think he has just got to try and generate poison, right? I can't see any other way through this Lich King. Or maybe +3 attack and everything.
Yeah, I guess.
It's looking pretty grims for Vinz, though.
Yeah, picks up the poison. But there's 11, 12 damage in play, and that Velen is going to be game-ending. ALB. Shaky moments, it has to be said. More than one occasion, he has looked a little bit unsure about his own play. 1 or 2 mechanical mistakes, 1 or 2 questionable lines, but he's done enough to get over the line in the end.
And it will stand him in good stead if he does get through to the top 16. That having to play under significantly less pressure early in the tournament, later on can come back and really help you when you've actually got that little bit of experience sitting there.
Yep. And again, these players have varying levels of experience in front of a camera, as can be said from casters, one of whom is just stuttering over every word that comes out of their mouth right now.
And the other one is me.
It's true. For once, it's true. But we, in fact, have a